mode today. I'm John Strickland, the mayor. All of the council members are here. 3 or 4 members of staff and 2 visitors who will be making presentations to us all in virtual mode today. I'd like to begin the meeting as we normally do with reports. And we'll start with our village manager, Jeff Sanborn, please.
Thank you, John. I'd like to give a little bit of a rundown on some updates we got from Matt Day last week relative to the NCDOT STIP. And I know I obviously shared this information with council last week, but for the public's benefit, I wanted to go ahead and talk about this as well. What we learned in a presentation that Matt Day gave last week, and Matt works for TARPO, is the following, and this is the NCDOT's Strategic Transportation Implementation Plan. And I'm just going to touch on the key projects that are in and around Pinehurst, the ones that we would be most concerned about. And I'll hit it in chronological order. This is the plan. In 2022, they plan to let contracts for the 15501 in Morganton minor improvements. I'm going to call it minor improvements because there's a later project at that intersection as well. This involves installation of dual left-hand turn lanes on 15501 for both approaches of that intersection. 2022 is also the time they have in the plan for the improvements that we have been talking about at the intersections of Page and Memorial with 15501. Then in 2024, and this is timed to be deconflicted with the U.S. Open in 2024. In other words, work wouldn't happen until afterward. There are several key projects. The first is a widening of 211 from West End to out past Seven Lakes. There'll be work on improving the 15501 and 2427 intersection in Carthage. They'll do the Highway 5 widening from US 1 to Blake Boulevard. In other words, the Aberdeen section of Highway 5. They plan to initiate work on the Super Street projects for 15501 and US 1 in Southern Pines and Aberdeen. It's important to note that there's one small section in Aberdeen on US 1 that will not be part of that project, but will commence in 2027 as part of a separate project. Big one for us, 2025, the Pinehurst Traffic Circle. In 2028 is when they have in this plan to work on 15501 widening north of the traffic circle. And I had some dialogue with council last week about the potential conflict between that project and the planned 2029 U.S. Open, and we hope to get that resolved. Then in 2030 is the Highway 5 section within the village limits, and then in 2031 is that follow-up project at the intersection of Morganton and 15501, which would involve some sort of an interchange. So that's what we learned. I would also like to comment on the public safety reports. Glenn Webb, our police chief, had some good comments at the end of the statistical or data portion of his crime stats. And of note, he noted that arrests are up quite substantially, or were in 2020, in the fiscal year 2020, or the calendar year 2020. And he said that reflects both self-initiated activity in more seasoned officers recognizing violations and making arrests. This proactivity and the ability to retain good officers contributed directly to the success. So there's, it's a bad news story looking at the data, but I think Glenn sees some very positive trends there. So I think that's a good thing to pass on to our community. And that concludes my report.
Jeff, thanks very much. Moving on to council, from my perspective, just 2 things. As a reminder to any persons who are listening and watching the meeting tonight, if you want to ask a question or make a comment, you may do so by email to the email address publiccomments public@vopnc.org. It's public comments, 2Cs, at vopnc.org. And the village clerk will read those messages at the end of this regular meeting. The second comment I'll make tonight has to do with the COVID situation. Operations at the Fair Barn on behalf of First Health have been going quite well in these first couple of weeks. They exceeded the number of doses administered. They thought they would do 2,000 in the first couple of weeks, and I understand last week they did in excess of 26 or maybe even 2,800. It's a very efficient operation there, and at the county level, their big need is just to get more doses, and we hope that will happen, but there are some issues with that nationally, as you're aware. So continue to wash, wear, and wait, everybody. Be safe out there, and let's make sure that Pinehurst remains a safe place to live and work in the coming months. Turning then to Village Council reports, Judy Davis, please.
Thank you, John. Both Kevin Drum and I and Jeff Sanborn sat in on the Tri-Cities meeting with Southern Pines and Aberdeen earlier today. We talked about a number of different programs and initiatives that we might undertake in the coming year. And one of them is with our Parks and Recreation departments, looking together to look at programs where there's overlap and collaboration that could happen. I think that'll be a good thing for the families within all the areas where they are shuttling children from one region to another for different sports facilities. So I think that's going to be a good program to watch as it develops this next year. Thank you, John.
Judy, thank you. And as a reminder to all of us, please speak up and get close to your microphones wherever they are. Kevin Drum, comments?
I'll just follow up with what Judy on the Tri-Cities. I thought it was interesting that Triangle J helped Moore County by supplying some help in their planning and zoning department because they were short a man and they're not a member yet. It might mean that they might join the Triangle J. Doesn't mean they'll be in Tri-Cities. Matter of fact, most of the other, but I just thought that was important new data. And I thought it was also important to note that Triangle J would do that on occasion if someone was short and needed some help. I didn't realize they did that. I know they did that for Robbins once, Jeff. I don't remember a planning staff person being borrowed from Triangle J before. In my 3.5 years, that's a new one. So I thought that was important. I conclude my report.
Kevin, thanks very much. Lydia Bosch?
Thank you, John. Just a reminder that the National Park Service is conducting a study of the Pinehurst National Historic Landmark District. As a landmark district, we're in the top 3% of the 90,000 properties that are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. This is a really big step for Pinehurst. The Park Service, with Natalie's amazing help, has been doing the initial groundwork for what they're getting ready to embark on next week, which is public input. So I'd like to thank the members of the community who have accepted the Park Service's invitation to be parts of a focus group. And also the Park Service is going to be soliciting public comment. There will be notices in the pilot. We'll be sending out electronic notices. So we welcome members of the community to be involved in this process. We're looking forward to it. We think, I've said it many times, we've got a great story to tell in what we've done to preserve our historic character in the village of Pinehurst. So I just want to thank Natalie again for getting this going and keeping it going and being a great connection between Pinehurst and the Park Service. And we really anticipate this next step. Thank you.
Lydia, thank you. And as you said, the public can look at the village's website and get other specific information, as you mentioned, about those programs, which begin next week, especially on February 2nd, an open public meeting where comments can be made. Jane, moving over to you, Jane Hogeman.
Hi, I just would like to thank Lydia for all she's done toward getting the National Park Service here and getting this program set up and so forth. I think it's going to be a wonderful opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, Jane. Moving on in our agenda then, we'll move to agenda item number 3, which is a motion to approve the consent agenda. Before seeking that motion, I will ask any council members, are there reports or other questions in the consent agenda which you want to have withdrawn or commented on before voting? Any requests? Seeing none, we'll move on to seek approval for the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve these reports?
I move to approve all the items listed and considered routine on the consent agenda.
Motion by Lydia Bosch. Is there a second, please?
Second that. I second
Second by
that.
Kevin Drum. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposed. The motion to approve the consent agenda is passed. Moving into item number 4 on our agenda for tonight. This is a presentation of the final library services needs assessment report. Village staff and our 2 consultants who are with us tonight have been very active in this over the last several days, several hours, several months, and we appreciate the attention that's been given. Jeff, do you wish to make any comments on this, or shall we go on to Natalie and then to Debbie Joy and Fred?
Yeah, thank you, John. I was just going to make a similar comments. This is a long time in the making, a lot of good, hard effort to finally make this possible. So I want to thank Debbie and Fred for joining us and look forward to the presentation. And I think I'll be turning it over to Natalie.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good. Like you said, we started this journey in the fall of 2019 to really understand what it that our community needs in terms of library services. And I want to start off by thanking our community and thanking all of the residents who participated in the process. We had a tremendous amount of engagement, especially early on. And I just want to say thank you to those residents who participated and shared their thoughts and opinions on the subject matter. As you know, we've pulled together a lot of data and information. Staff has done that, our consultants have done that, and we've analyzed all of that, and that's going to be the basis for the recommendations that you'll see in the report here that Debbie and Fred are going to review with you shortly. But before I turn it over to them to go through their presentation, I do wanted to take a minute and recognize Audrey Moriarty at the library. Audrey was extremely supportive and responsive to all of Debbie and Fred's requests for information. So, and my request for information, so we could understand how the library is currently operating, and so she was just invaluable to that process. So I want to say thank you, Audrey, if you're listening, for everything you did. Beth Dunn also was a big help and support on this project as well. So with that, thank you, Debbie and Fred. I'll echo Jeff's thanks as well. And I'll pass it on over to you and let you go through the report now.
Thank you. Thanks, Natalie, John, and council. We are really delighted to be with you this afternoon. Thanks for your time. Fred, did you want to share screen and drive, or would you like me to? You're muted.
If you have it up and ready, that would be great. Otherwise,
I do.
Hold up.
We are ready for action. So while we are sharing screen, I just want to echo Natalie's comments. We don't often see this much engagement with the community, this much participation. So we really appreciate the community. Audrey is amazing, so thanks. Of course, Natalie's been amazing, and Fred, so thanks to everybody. Okay. So now I'm going to share my screen. Uh-oh. I opened my slideshow before I shared my screen.
There we go.
There we go. Okay. All right. So that's why we're here this afternoon, to take a look at the report, do a quick overview. We understand that you all have a heavy agenda today, so we'll be really respectful of your time. So just thank you. Thanks to everyone for all your work. It's really been a pleasure. It has, in fact, been a comprehensive process. We made a start in September of 2019. We've been working pretty steadily all the way through. Certainly nobody expected COVID and all the challenges that brought, but fortunately we were able to get a lot of in-person input before that time. And then we were able to do the mailed ETC survey after COVID started, and we were able to get that input. So lots of iterations and lots of work, and that brings us to today. We put a lot of effort into synthesizing all of the public input, gathering it together and figuring out what it all meant. So across these multiple methods that included interviews, they included focus groups, public meetings, online survey, and that ETC survey that I just mentioned, we kind of were able to see that residents really desire an expanded collection of books and magazines for all age groups. Digital media, so that means ebooks, e-audiobooks, and databases, information that we can access from home. That was really important during the last few months. Children's programs were a big area of agreement. Curriculum-based, things that help kids learn to read and support early literacy. Digital Learning Lab and public computers, really that means just some access to technology and the internet at the library. Print, copy, and scan, that's pretty straightforward. And then book clubs, lectures, and discussion groups, that refers to things like gathering at the Given and book clubs that already exist, those adult programs. So folks wanted to see some expansion there. The younger residents, families with young children, specifically requested more adult and young adult or teen programs, more space for conferences and meetings, and then some space for individual quiet study and quiet work. So that really boils down to the things we just talked about. Expansion of children's collection, books and materials, digital media, things that one can access from home, ebooks, children's programs, and classes for all ages, and particularly classes for young adults. So when we talk about the statistically valid mailed survey, the shorthand that we've used kind of throughout the project is the ETC survey. And that survey was mailed, we had 410 responses. That gives us a 95% confidence in the results. And so they're really summarized right here. You can see it pretty clearly, and it just echoes what I just said about those top areas of desire for residents. Children's, digital, children's programs, young adult. So we also asked, how are we going to pay for this? You know, how should we fund this library? And we found, and this is the mailed ETC survey results. So I want to be specific about that. 67% of residents believe that the village should fund a library. There's a small majority, 57%, who would support a tax increase of at least a penny, and 43% don't support any tax increase at all. So what is the tolerance? If we break that down a little bit, we know who would support at least a penny, but who would support some different increments? And that, again, that's in the report. It's pretty straightforward. 13%, 2 pennies, 10%, 3 pennies, and so forth. And then we have that 43% who doesn't want to see any increase in taxes at all. So once we think about what the community wants, once we think about the operation and how we might pay for it, we took a long look at the space. And so kind of boiled it down to the approximate square footage to meet the needs today, the basic needs for traditional library services, which is what the community told us they want, kind of traditional library services, is 10 to 12,000 square feet. And currently in the library, 3,800 or 3,825 square feet is allocated to library services. So a very deep dive into library facility size, and I will let Fred talk about that a little bit more. But Fred, did you want to jump in and review this material?
Sure. So this represents a little more detail on the basic space summary that Debbie provided a moment ago. Of the wish list that we received from the community, we broke it down into tiers. that ramp up from basic needs through some of the more wish list items. And this represents a low, mid, and high range for the program components that were highlighted as the basic needs. As you'll see, that 10 to 12,000 square feet represents the low end of tier 1 and the basically low to mid range of tier 1 and the low end of tier 2. So it's a pretty good working number for the program needs that the greatest desire has been expressed for. Next slide, please. Based on the feedback that we received previously, we also reevaluated the potential locations. I think it's important to note that for each of these, there is some possibility for expansion in the future, should there be a need or desire to grow the library further. And this represents an approximate cost range for each of the locations that we evaluated. Next slide, please. This represents a high-level analysis of each of those 4 options, beginning with an expansion of the current location. Some advantages are that it allows the library services to remain in the location that the community's been accustomed to. Second location evaluated was near Village Hall, which would further supplement the village community offerings. Third option was another historic structure that is currently underutilized or not utilized. And the fourth location was co-locating with the existing community center. Next slide, please. This is a little bit more of a detailed cost breakdown for each of those locations. One thing I wanted to bring to your attention, for the current location, we're actually showing 2 sets of numbers. The first column, option 1, represents the renovation costs for the full facility, including the archive square footage. The reason we're showing this is most likely for a building renovation of this magnitude, you would want to touch all of the building square footage at one time. And the second option, option 1A, is to provide a more apples to apples comparison with the other 3 sites. This removes the cost for renovating the archive square footage and focuses only on the library program itself. With that, I'll turn it back over to Debbie.
Thanks, Fred. So when we, once we move through the possibilities for facility and talk about the size a little bit, we start to think about the operational components of the library. So number 1 is the collection, those print and digital materials. What we have projected based on a community the size of Pinehurst, based on the things that members in the community told us they want, and based on kind of the personality of Pinehurst, a community of readers and literate folks. We landed on 28 to 30,000 titles. We know that we have about 15,500 titles existing. So this number includes the existing titles, and that would be the total, what we call opening day collection. So that would be the collection that when the doors open to the expanded facility. Library programs, really important. Virtual programs, also important right now. So we would want to expand those curriculum-based educational programs for kids. Those are the emergent literacy story times we talked about, and also the programs for adults that we talked about. We did hear from the community a desire for increased hours of operation, particularly for young working families, so they could stop by the library in the evening or on Saturday, bring the family to the library. So an increase to 48 hours a week is baked into what we've considered. And then technology. So we want to have some public access computers, some tablets or devices that are more flexible and can move around. And then definitely access to Wi-Fi. To operate the library, we need some technology behind that, what we call an ILS, Integrated Library System. That keeps track of all the materials, all the library card holders. It's kind of a database that helps us operate the library. So for construction, we took a look at and put some thought into potential ways to pay for it, funding mechanisms. So the village I understand is debt-free currently, so long-term debt is an option. A fundraising campaign is an option. In the ETC survey, we took the temperature of the community regarding if folks would be willing to contribute. We found that many were. Save up money or use existing fund balance reserves. Utilize part of the current Given Memorial Library endowment. The State Library of North Carolina provides funding to libraries, and so that's definitely something we would want to take a look at. And also seeking grants from the federal government, IMLS, Institute of Museum and Library Services. We talked about the state of North Carolina, and then fundraising from nonprofit groups and corporations. So if the village decided to operate a library, there are a couple of operational models that could be considered, and there are some alternative funding mechanisms that could also be possibilities. Two operational models are municipal. So municipal meaning that the village or the local government operates the library. The other model is outsourced operation, where you hire somebody to come in and operate the library. Some of the things that those two models have in common is all the folks stay in place, the staff stays in place. Volunteers are really an important part of current library operation, those stay in place. All the assets, the building, the collection, furniture, fixtures, equipment, and technology would be owned by the village. That's typical in other communities, understanding that we've talked about the building a little bit. And then many libraries have a library advisory board. I know the Given Library currently has a board. Under both of these models, the library advisory board and village staff collaborate to make decisions about the library and its operation. The difference under outsourced operation is there is professional staff kind of in the background that's available to help with planning, developing the collection, managing operations, HR, marketing, finance, things of that nature. And then there's some economies of scale. So being part of a big group, get better vendor discounts for books and materials and technology. So what are some ways to pay for a library operation? What are the funding mechanisms? Non-resident user fees. So we know that Southern Pines uses that model currently. Additional property tax revenue. We talked about that a second ago. Seek State Library of North Carolina aid. That seems like it would be a very nice option. And then take a look at those grants from LSTA, Grants to States program run by IMLS. We talked about that. And then there is some money through the first iteration of the CARES Act and also through the most recent iteration of the CARES Act. Actually, IMLS funding grew during the last budget cycle. So there is some funding out there from state and federal government. How much would it cost to operate this kind of library? So we took a look at the operational costs. So that does not include the collection, that opening day collection that I talked about. And it's looking like it would cost between $800,000 and $940,000. That bakes in both operational models. And the village currently contributes $150,000 a year for library operation. So it's an increase of $650,000 to $790,000. And that's it. We understand that council has had the report since Thursday, so hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at it. I just did want to thank the community, thank village staff and council again. It's been really great to get to know Pinehurst a little bit better, get to know the community. My only regret is that we weren't able to be there in person more often due to the pandemic. So we'd sure be open to hearing your questions.
Debbie, thanks very much. And Fred, the same. I think we do as a council, each member have some questions we'd like to address. And many of them I think will have to do with slide number 12 or so on the construction and renovation, not to jump to there too quickly. But as a first question, one of the things in our minds and that came out in the public feedback was, what is this so-called library of the future? And what about the impact of digital media on construction space needs, things of that nature? Would you want to elaborate a little bit on that now, and then we'll go into some other questions?
Sure. Fred, do you want to take that one? Would you like me to take it? I'm glad to.
I think we should tag team this. I think there's the broader trend question, and then we can speak about the spatial impact.
Okay.
All right, I'll jump in and then I'll pause, Fred. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
So John, you asked about the Library of the Future. We do a lot of work trying to understand what that is, and the pandemic has certainly had an impact. We're spending a lot of time right now trying to make some projections about what things will look like when we go back to normal. If there's one word that sums up the Library of the Future, I think it would be flexibility. So we want to have spaces that can be used in different ways. What we did hear from the community of Pinehurst is the community is pretty interested in traditional library services. So they didn't tell us they really wanted a space for performing arts. They didn't really tell us they wanted a maker space where you could go in and access technology. So Fred, I'll pause there.
So to echo Debbie's comments, we're seeing really libraries evolve in a lot of ways into something akin to a community center that also offers, book storage. So a lot of other communities are looking at, again, as Debbie said, maker spaces, test kitchens, video and text editing opportunities. And we didn't hear a lot of that from the community. We heard some desire for some meetings. So in terms of traditional library services, most people clearly associate that with stack space. And to be perfectly honest, we've not seen much movement away from books. We've seen a lot of movement to supplementing traditional print media with electronic media, but so far we've not had many communities that have expressed an interest in not providing print material. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It helps me very much. I'm sure others as well. Thank you for that. Let me go around to the council, starting with Judy Davis.
Okay, thank you, John. And this definitely is the slide I wanted to start on. And my question here maybe is for Fred. So in looking at just the cost on 1A, at a high end, you're looking at 5 million, which is roughly in line with all of the others except for near Village Hall and the firehouses. You were rehabbing that. I was surprised it was as low as it is, given that you've got a classical architecture and more expensive, probably brickwork, and trying to stay with that building in any way, shape, or form. Were you looking at it internally only or externally as well too?
Sorry, I lost the tail. You can hear my barking dog. I lost the tail end of your question.
Okay, so the $5,057,000 for option 1A, I was surprised at how relatively low that was, given classical architecture. And I just wanted to be sure that that's an inside and an outside number or interior only.
It's a great question. It is, and to be perfectly honest, some of this is projecting ahead. I was expecting to get the opposite question, which is why this cost as much as the new building. And the answer to that is exactly what you described. With the new building, particularly option 4 near the community center, if we look at some of the materials and type of construction, it's less costly on a square foot basis than what we would expect to be putting into a renovation in addition to your current facility. So that number, would you like me to pause for a minute till he calms down, or can you hear me?
You're doing all right.
You're doing fine.
We are anticipating, masonry, veneer construction, and classical architecture with that, and we're expecting a relatively comprehensive renovation, including full building systems within that number. But to echo your comment, it is not an opulent number, and some of that is with us trying to reflect our understanding of where council would like to be from an overall project budget.
Okay. And the other thing is that in each of these sites, are there any that would not be eligible for a larger footprint? So let's just say that we got crazy and we wanted to do 14,000 instead of an upper limit of 12. Are there any of these that would come off the list if you went up, a little bit higher?
That's a great question. So clearly with the existing location, if there's interest in expanding significantly in the future, we would want to take that into account with the design of the additions, because that site will be a little more challenging with the existing architecture. And then depending on how your community process goes with the Park Service, they may have an opinion about overall footprint.
Mhm.
Site 2 near Village Hall would be a site that's easy to expand.
Right, right.
Site 4 near the community center would be a site that's easy to expand, with the caveat it would impact your available outdoor space for sports and other recreational activities. The firehouse could be limited, or it could have greater expansion capacity as well, depending on what ends up happening with property acquisition, specifically to the rear of it in the future.
You'd have to pick up some more land behind it,
That's
is what you're
correct.
saying. Okay,
Yes.
or go higher or something, additional story. Okay, that's useful. And then I have another question too about page 17, about the, not 17, 17, yeah, 17 about all the different places where we could get money. Any thoughts about how much money might be represented by these? I'm talking about the state aid and the grants and things like that. Is that like $5,000? Is it going to be $100,000? What could we expect as the scope of money we could collect?
Judy, I don't have that off the top of my head, but the state of North Carolina does a great job of sharing data. And so I can go in and find out, I could get some averages of libraries serving communities of a similar size and get back with you. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that'd be dynamite. I'm not expecting it to be a material amount of money, but if it is, that would be a happy thing to learn.
In my experience, I don't have experience in North Carolina with state aid specifically, but in other states, it's not game changing for the budget, but it kind of just gives us some cushion and opportunity to do more than we would otherwise.
Okay, great.
I'll find that and share it with you guys.
And then one last question on page 11, when you talk about the hours of operation, are you thinking about 6 days a week, 7 days a week, or are you just thinking about more the same Monday through Friday? Page 13. Monday through Friday with more hours, or what were your thoughts there on going to 48 hours a week?
We have, I believe, and I'd have to stop sharing my screen, but there's some Saturday hours in there. I don't think we put in any Sunday hours. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
There's a table in the report. I believe it's on page. I need to stop sharing my screen to get it for you, but there's a
Okay.
little table with the
All right.
suggested hour.
All right, great. Thank you so much. That's it for me. I'll pass.
Thank you, Judy. Lydia, you had some questions, I think, too, some of them related to the construction costs, among other things. Do you want to pursue that?
Sure, John. First, I have a question. It's the page entitled Library Facility Size, where we talked about the square footage for Tier 1 and Tier 2. And there's a line on there that says Best Practice Standard for Library Size. What is that?
Do I need to take that, Debbie, or would you?
I'm glad to, whatever's best for you.
So the best practice standard library size, and we discussed this some in the last council meeting that we were at. This is kind of representative of what we typically are seeing in communities of similar size and population for library services, representing a typical range of library services.
Okay, so if we had all the money in the world and all the space in the world, this would be our aspiration.
Well, I can't speak for your aspiration. What this represents is the larger suite of library services, including some of those communal spaces that did not make it into the tier one that has been
Okay.
focused on for this iteration of the study.
Okay, so that's our dream drawing. If we, like I said, if there were no limits on how much our financial resources and our space resources. Okay, now going to where we have the option 1 and option 1A, the table with the comparable cost. Okay, I'm still trying to conceptualize what 1 and 1A are, and I'd asked the question earlier. You know, we were told that it was to renovate and expand the entire building. So my assumption was that was the Great Expectations, or, you know, whatever that plan was. But then I was told it wasn't. So I'm trying to get a better conceptual idea of what number 1 and number 1A look like.
Sure. So in options 1A, 2, 3, and 4, what that represents is 10,000 square feet to 12,000 square feet of dedicated library space. Within the current location, there's also, I believe it's 4,875 square feet of space used for the archives.
Okay.
So the reason we wanted to present it both ways, so what this represents is 14,875 to 16,875. Math isn't my strong suit, so hopefully that's accurate. And the reason we wanted to show you both is if the existing building were to be renovated with new systems, you would want to most likely renovate all of the square footage, including the archives, because it would be very difficult to break out or piecemeal that renovation over time.
Okay. So that would be option 1, is a complete renovation of the entire building.
With an
Correct.
expansion to get you.
But that's not the Great Expectations. This is something slightly different, or?
That is not a 17,000 to 20,000 square foot library. That is correct.
Okay,
Option
Okay.
1 is a 10,000 to 12,000 square foot library plus the existing archives renovation.
okay. And so option 1A looks like what?
So option 1A is really the same square footage, but it's renovating only the library portion. It's basically excluding any improvements to the archive square footage.
And we would still get 10 to 12,000 square feet of library space?
That's correct.
Okay,
It's a little bit artificial, truly,
It is.
but you're just trying to normalize that option against 2, 3, and 4.
That's correct.
You know.
Right. I think you did this more as a way to compare against some of the others. It's not an
Yeah.
option that would seem on its face to have real value to it or purpose, but it's a way to compare.
That's correct.
Okay.
Hopefully we didn't confuse things, but we wanted to try to be as transparent as possible.
Right, right. No, I think we have it, Fred. Thanks. Go ahead, Lydia.
no, those were my questions. I was just trying to figure out what the best practice standard includes. And then I was trying to get just a clearer picture of what option 1 and 1A look like.
Okay, good, good. Kevin, do you have questions for Debbie or Fred?
No questions. I'm just grateful. Worked on this for over 3 years. We finally got an option 1 that is holistic in nature. So that's my only comment. So taken us a while, but we finally got an option that is holistic in nature, that deals with the archives and the library. I think that's great.
Okay, thank you. Jane?
Then
Jane
you're on
Hoberman?
mute.
Jane, you may be on mute or we're not hearing you. Does anybody have her on the screen? I do not.
Yeah, she's on mute and she's trying to get off.
Okay,
She needs the timeout.
as a preamble to that, I'll
Can
indicate to
Jason,
the staff members here that I'll be calling on them if they want to ask questions too. Go ahead, Jane.
No questions.
Okay,
Sorry. After all
Comments?
that.
all right.
Hey,
We have
John,
several-
this
Go
is
ahead.
Natalie. Can I
Yes.
add something?
Yes, I was just about to say, I wanted to call on you and Jeff or other staff that are present to ask any questions they have. So Natalie, please go ahead.
Okay. I did go ahead and pull up the report. I think Judy, you had a question about the operating hours?
Yes.
It is in the report, the full report, but I did want to just point that out because I pulled it up while Debbie was going through those other questions. It is assuming a 10 a.m. At least this was the recommended
Sure, sure.
schedule. 10 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay,
Thursday,
okay,
a.m. to 5 p.m. on Friday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday, with no Sunday operating hours.
okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Natalie.
And Natalie, any other follow-up comments or questions from yourself?
No, I don't have any. I just, again, thank you. I like I said, this was a pretty extensive process, and I was just very pleased to see the level of engagement that we saw. I think we've done about as deep a dive as we can in the data and the numbers and everything else. So hopefully we have given you, council, the information that you need to, proceed with evaluating the options that you have before you. And as always, I'm here to provide whatever additional information or support that you may need.
Okay. And Jeff Batten or Jeff Sanborn, do either of you have any questions you'd like to address?
No, John, I do not. Thank you.
I don't
Same for
either,
you?
John. Thank you.
All right, very good. If any other staff, I don't know, Brooke, want to make sure that you all have your time here with our consultants in this final report. Hearing no other questions, I think we can draw this presentation to a close. Is there any objection from the council? If not, Debbie, Fred, thank you so very much. We look forward to reviewing this report in even more detail. And should we have reason to come back to you with any questions, I know you'd be happy, and Natalie would be in touch with you about that. So thank you very much for your participation tonight. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Everybody.
Absolutely. We appreciate you. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
Bye.
Be safe.
That concludes item number 4 on the agenda. We'll move to item number 5, which is the review and approval of the balanced scorecard for fiscal 2022 and the IAPs for fiscal 22 through 26. Jeff, back to you. Jeff Sanborn.
All right, thank you, John. This is a continuation of the conversation that we all had in the last work session. I appreciate the feedback that you gave staff, Lauren in particular. And so I'm going to turn it over to Lauren, and I'm thinking we're probably at the point where we can get your approval on this and move on, but we'll see how it goes.
Thank you, Jeff.
Great, thank you. I'll take it from here. Council, it's good to see all of you. As Jeff mentioned, I'm here to review several items that are related to the development of our strategic operating plan. And all of these are based on council's discussions that really started back at the strategic planning retreats back in December. Since the January 12th work session, I made the suggested change, and that change was adding a note on the balanced scorecard, in particular to the short and long-term goals associated with established financial policies. So I made a note, as mentioned, on that corporate balance scorecard document to indicate that. Council, today we are seeking your approval by motion specific to the fiscal year 22 balance scorecard, which includes the areas of focus. We are also seeking your guidance on the proposed list of initiative action plans for the 5-year planning period. This is being done now so that we can ensure that as senior leaders develop the strategic operating plan and go ahead and begin working on their budget request, that they align with council's priorities. So first, we'll take a look and discuss the balanced scorecard. So I will get that pulled up here on the screen. So as you see here on the screen, we have the balanced scorecard as proposed. This indicates the proposed goals, strategic objectives, key performance indicators, and goals, both short-term and long-term. And as a reminder, the 3 areas of focus are the items that are listed in red. So there are 3 areas of focus. The first is to manage development to protect the village character. One is to support, the next is to support the business community. And then the last is to provide a safe and effective multimodal transportation system. Staff will kick off the development of our strategic operating plan process tomorrow with a meeting. And this and the areas of focus will provide the direction that we need in order to ensure alignment within our departments. Council, I'm going to stop here specific to the balanced scorecard. Do you have any questions on this?
I do not.
I have to say that I think our language on number 2, manage the development to protect our village character, might be the best we've ever done at expressing what we want to have happen. I think it captures it well.
Pat yourself on the back.
There you go. That's perfect.
How many years did that take?
Any other questions or comments? If not, a motion's provided in your agenda to approve these items. Before we move to the initiative action plans, we can go ahead and do that if you wish.
I'd rather wait until we talk about the initiative action plans.
Okay, perfect. Let me pull that up, if that's okay. So we've got a list of initiative action plans that are included in your packet. I'm getting to it now on the screen. So the village has identified 6 proposed initiative action plans for the 5-year planning period. These are identified in the attachment and what I've got on the screen. And we define initiative action plans as measurable activities that are needed to address our strategic opportunities that involve a significant amount of financial and/or staff resources, or they may have a significant community impact over the planning period. So you'll see those 6 initiative action plans listed. One is to update the PDO. The next is small area plans for a Village Place Rattlesnake Trail corridor in the NC Highway 5 commercial area. We have expand downtown parking facilities, develop a consolidated multimodal transportation plan. We have develop a comprehensive stormwater master plan. And lastly, expand or enhance library services. Council, do you have any questions or discussions on this list of proposed initiative action plans?
I do.
Okay.
Okay. Was I misreading the covering memo where it said there would be 9 IAPs?
Corrected. Yes, my apologies. My apologies. There are 6. That was a typo on my part.
I think that update the Pinehurst Development Ordinance is enormously important, but I wholeheartedly disagree with hiring a consultant, boiling the ocean, and pushing it out over 3 years. I think we need to be looking at the, I call them meat and potatoes items that need to be updated promptly and work on it now. By 2024, there's not going to be anything left to plan for. The one on the small area plans is fine, downtown parking. I'm not exactly sure, still to this day, what a consolidated multimodal transportation plan is. And I wonder whether this is going to involve yet another consultant.
Jeff is nodding.
I don't know if Jeff is on.
Yes, it will.
I would expect yes. The answer is yes.
Jeff, in addition to the transportation planner?
Yeah, that's what I mean. We're getting a transportation planner.
You're getting someone who's in planning, but also has a background in transportation. I don't know how to defend the staff more than to say they all have full-time day jobs. All of these transportation plans, stormwater plans, the PDO require some effort above and beyond their very busy work week. Mm-hmm. And if we don't want them to do their day job, they can stop and do some of these. But I think you want these things to proceed in parallel.
Well, my thought about it is, and I hear what you're saying, Judy, but my thought about it is, especially after some experiences that we've had, is that hiring a consultant does not exactly streamline the process. And the staff ends up working awfully hard anyway, trying to coordinate with the consultant. So we might, and then we have to pay the consultant to bring him up to speed, understanding Pinehurst. So if we had somebody in-house, it might actually work out better. But so I do have a concern about that. Then developing a comprehensive stormwater master plan was highlighted on the initiative action plan chart for fiscal year 2021. And I don't understand why it isn't highlighted now, because it's still very important with all the infill that we're getting. And finally, I think we should be adding back in an initiative action plan that was in the 2021 list, and that is PDO updates to protect focus area 5. That was up in goal 2 last year, and boy, we need it to be in there now. We can't leave that out. So I'm disappointed not to see that there. And I will go on to say, and I'll say it now because I'm talking and then I can stop talking, but the areas of focus, and with the exception of the comments I've just made, the initiative action plan list are okay. But I do have real problems with the 4 lenses that we use. I went back and looked at the ETC importance and satisfaction rating at the items that they found to be of high importance and problem, big problems for the village. And then I looked at the 2021 balanced scorecard, the KPIs there, which at that time had some catching up to do because they were not up to the standard that we wanted. There aren't very many of them, but there were a few. And I also looked at the SOAR chapter in our retreat materials. There's some charts about what items the people in the village seem to be the most concerned with. And they start on page 35 of the SOAR section. And none of those match up with the performance gaps lens. Several of the strategic opportunities seem to be out of date. We've got expand the ETJ to the north, for example. But gosh, we need to attend to protecting or updating the PDO to bring it into alignment with the comprehensive plan for focus area 5 before we go looking at the ETJ to the north. So those are my comments. I really want to add in a reference to focus area 5, which was in last year's list of IAPs, and I am very concerned about that Pinehurst Development Ordinance project stretching out over such a long time.
I
Thank
wonder
you.
if.
I apologize,
Jane
you all,
makes
that I got kicked off of Zoom, but I think I heard
Oh,
the most of that. So I apologize that I
I'm sorry.
came back. Thank
Tell
you.
me what you
I'll tell you,
missed.
Zoom's getting unstable right now. Just thought I'd give everybody a heads up.
yeah, Kevin makes a good point, and I don't know whether it's this East Coast phenomena that Jason had mentioned earlier, but there are some issues around. So if you drop away, try to get back as best you can. Lauren, I think you said you heard most of what Jane was talking about, and I think we did want to have you respond. So why don't you respond to what you heard, and if there's other issues, we'll come back to that from that list and a couple things I have and the other council members. But go ahead.
So I heard, Jane, that it was important for the PDO to get done. You were hesitant of the timeline of that general snapshot of it spanning across a long time frame.
Yeah.
I will mention this list of initiative action plans is just the beginning. So what staff will do is take this list to understand when council's wishing for us to begin these initiative action plans, and we create an entire workbook that includes a detailed task list that will help lay out what all of the steps are, what's involved in it, how we will get it done. We take a look at staff resources that are available. We take a look at what financial resources might need to be available for each of the initiative action plans. Staff does a complete analysis on what each of these initiative action plans will entail. And so, you know, I think a lot of this feedback is helpful. And I will say we're just at the starting point, though, of fully understanding, you know, for some of these, now others are already underway, obviously the small area plans and a couple of others, but it's, you know, we will begin developing further details on each of these initiative action plans and understanding what else is on the plate of staff, you know, how to divvy out all of the different assignments that we have that are urgent and important priorities to get done and accomplished. So I heard that
Lauren, let me just comment a bit on that, on this one item before moving on. I guess what you're saying, though, is that the probability that the update to the PDO will move closer in rather than be scheduled out as it is here now out to 2024 is pretty remote. In other words, the 2022 to 2024 fiscal year work and completion on that project is unlikely to change unless council says to change it in some way. Is that correct? Because all the work you're talking about just lays out a plan to accomplish that in the time frame that's now shown on the IAP.
Correct. That's right. And I know Darren had, you know, good discussion with you all at the last meeting in particular to this initiative action plan of what he believes it will take to get all of those different moving parts and pieces done for this initiative action plan. Hey, Darren.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. I just want
on the issue of consultants, which Jane raised in a couple of places, it's always a conundrum, it seems to me. On the one hand, do we hire somebody and make that a full-time equivalent person who can do the work that a consultant study needs to accomplish, or do we hire the consultant, which may take longer and require more orientation, but it end up financially might being cheaper than having a full-time equivalent person, I suppose. So that's not a question for you to answer, Lauren. It's just the way I kind of look at using consultants or not in this conundrum we seem to be in.
John, I can guarantee you that hiring staff is not faster than employing a consultant. It's not.
Jeff, I was just going to add that too. It's just the time frame. You're not going to compress the time frame with staff. You might be able to get a couple of the low hanging fruit items done quicker. But if you're looking at doing a comprehensive update, the time frame is not going to be compressed with a staff member with a new staff member. I just don't see it happening that way. We can get some of the
it's not a staff member. I mean, in order to provide the expertise required for everything that's done here, we're talking about multiple staff members.
Yeah. I know you've been very consistent.
Just advertising, interviewing, waiting, onboarding. We already have consultants working, you know.
And the thing that I think, I'm sorry.
I'm just going to say that the staff's certainly been very consistent on that view before, Jeff and Darren, so I appreciate that. But Lauren, you were about to go into Jane's other point. And Kevin, did you have a further comment on that?
Yeah, I thought it was important to say when we hire a consultant, we don't get a person, we get a team.
That's right.
We get expertise. What I think's lacking is we're so unique. You guys know that. We're all council members who talk about the uniqueness of this community. Unfortunately, traditional PDO updates are probably not where we're going to be. We're probably in a sophisticated level where we need a consultant and we need a team that has encountered a unique community like ours and has a team of people to help us get through it. So I think we ought to look at what the best outcome would be. And I think the best outcome would be a consultant. That's
Yeah.
what I-
Let me ask a question. If we do the consultant route, and I agree with what you guys are saying about it's not just one person and it's, so if you do get a consultant, how long does it take to get that consultant and how long does it take for that consultant to complete the project, the update of the PDO or the UDO, whatever we call it? Does that take through fiscal year 24?
I think it depends on how you structure the contract, what type of consultant you're hiring, how deep a pool of talent they can draw from, what projects that they might have in a queue right now. So it's really, and what really is the task? How comprehensive of an update? How much of a restructuring of that PDO are we looking at doing? So I think that gets laid out when we start to lay out the actual, if we do go to run an RFQ. My thought is, does it need to take all 2 years? And it really depends on the amount of engagement that you want to have. We could hire a consultant to turn around and develop a PDO, a UDO in a short amount of time, but that would mean a less amount of engagement on the front end. But you're always, my experience here, you're going to want a lot of engagement at some point along the process. And generally it's that engagement that extends the time frame. It's not the actual writing. We can write things and turn them around relatively quickly. It's when we start to debate the issues and start to hammer away at the individual provisions that time frame lengthens. Next month we're gonna first have our tree. That tree ordinance is first going to come to light, and we've been working on that thing for a year and a half. So, and they were working on it before me. So. Just, it seemed, some of these low hanging fruit items seem like they're easy to discuss, but once you get them into committee, once you get them before a public body, sometimes, that discussion gets extended out. But I would say 18 months, 12 to 18 months to actually develop it. And then, you're going to extend it probably by 6 months worth of reviews. So 2 years is probably adequate.
Okay.
And it's true that we don't have anybody on staff with the time or the experience to do that. Is that correct?
Well, we have experience, but the time capacity is somewhat of an issue. If we could sit there and just look at it and work on that nonstop, maybe. But again, there's more elements to that UDO that we don't have the in-house experience to work on. So we can handle parts of it, but we can't handle the vast majority of it.
That goes to Kevin's point. We're hiring a team, not a person.
Yeah.
So let me ask this, if I may, Darren. Do we have to boil the whole ocean? Do we have to really redo the entire development ordinance, or are there a few areas that we could work on and get relatively quick amendments that would be helpful where we have seen a need as we've been working with various items that have come before the council over the last year?
Let me just jump in. Yeah, the answer is yes. We can do both. It would just mean that potentially some of it might have to be redone or modified when we do the.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
I would like to include doing that in this IAP.
The problem a little bit of the problem that I see is redoing some of that work. Some of the work that you want done is relative to the development standards. It's relative to the subdivision regs. It's relative to the ESSM. That is a large undertaking. There is a lot of work associated with that.
Some of us difficult, some of us not. We have to be very careful about what we choose to do.
Correct.
This was the most important IAP in the last fiscal year, and we really haven't gotten very far on it.
Dan, you referenced an IAP about Focus Area 5 for last year?
No. Updating the PDO was number one.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought previously you were talking about an IAP that somehow dropped.
Yes.
About Focus Area
Yes.
5.
In addition, Jeff, in last year's list of IAPs was one to do a small area plan for focus area 5. Now, I don't know that we really need to do a whole small area plan.
There was not.
Yeah,
There was
Yeah.
none.
There was not.
yeah, I'm looking
It was
at it,
not.
looking at it in the, I'm looking at it in the printout that I got at the retreat.
What's it say? Read it to us, Jane.
I've got
It's in goal 2.
the 2021 strategic operating plan in front of me right here, and I'm looking at the IAP.
Well, somebody
yourself-
handed this out to me. I did not make it up myself. This is proposed fiscal year 2021 to 2025 initiative action plans with the brown thing across the top, then the dark green thing, and the whole list and a bunch of them in red. And under goal 2, promote high quality development and appearance. Number 1, update the Pinehurst Development Ordinance. Number 2, extend ETJ authority. Number 3, small area plan for Village Place / Rattlesnake Trail corridor. And number 4, small area plan for NC Highway 5 commercial area. Oh, that's right.
Okay.
I'm looking at that 5. My mistake.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no
But
problem.
I would, see, that's what happens.
Okay.
I apologize. We
Well, I
should
don't
have
know.
called it, I keep saying, hang on, I keep saying we should have called it focus area, and the other way around, anyway. But I
Okay.
would like to add in that we do something, and we can fold it in to update the PDO as long as we're doing it with stuff that we move on quickly, to do something about focus area 5, because it is hanging out there. And it's,
Well, actually, to that point and a couple others that Jane has made, in the work session, we'll have a discussion tonight about our relationship with the planning board and a variety of things we'd like to do with them. And one is, working on PDO updates and changes and things like focus area 5, perhaps. So that might be a way to make some progress on some of these items, but we'll get
Yeah,
to
but
that
one
later.
comment I wanted to make about this discussion about piecemealing the PDO. I wasn't on the village council, but John, you were when this PDO, you guys tried to tweak it, tried to update the PDO, right? Weren't you on the council at that time, John?
Just at the very end of that start, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And-
I was there at every meeting. I was attending every meeting, seeing the anguish on the faces. And it looks like you guys made an attempt at a group update of the PDO, and it was not successful. So I'm saying, let's don't do that again. Let's do it the right way, because we tried that once, and I think you guys worked damn hard. I saw it. I know it wasn't lack of work. I know you worked hard. I just think that it was an impossible task for a volunteer group to accomplish. And
Well, I think you're partially right, and also the issue of, what was the vision? What were the things that needed to be covered in the PDO, which we didn't even identify what we know today
Right.
back in those days.
But it's hard.
Let's have Lauren go ahead here and keep responding to some of the points that Jane has made, and then there'll be others that the rest of the council have, I think. So Lauren, I think you were prepared to answer some other questions there.
Well, we've kind of circled back to the other point that I heard, which was about focus area 5, but I'm
Right.
now taking that off. So let me ask you this, is there something that we need to change today? Is there an initiative action plan that should not be on this list or needs to be on this list that the council has a consensus that needs to make a change?
I want focus area 5 on there.
But is that an IAP or is that, I mean, we have so many levels of things. Is that
I
just,
know we do.
right,
I
right.
want it.
Does that belong as an IAP?
Can you
I
tell me?
thought I
what-
remembered.
You said focus area 5, what is the action that you're intending for focus area 5?
I want
If I-
to make some PDO text amendments to bring, because I don't think that the work to bring it into compliance with the vision in the comprehensive plan is as complex as it would be for focus areas 2 or 4. So I don't know that we have to do a full-blown small area plan, but I do think we have to do some text amendments to do that. And I think we ought to do it promptly.
Then it should stay in the PDO. I mean, I think that, I'm hopeful that Darren will come back to us with a game plan that is a bit of a hybrid. You know, what are the things that we could conceivably do via text amendment? We've been talking for a while about getting to a quarterly cadence of text amendments. So let's figure out how to implement that going forward. And then also look at the overhauling of the PDO. And whether that focus area 5, those text amendments can be something that's easy to do early on or not, explore that. But I don't think you need a different IAP for that.
Mm-mm.
I don't either.
I agree.
I remember something, and I just want to know if I'm going crazy, which probably is the case. But I remember us as a first step, Judy, agreeing that one of the reasons we were getting this GIS software is like to map out that focus area 5 and understand it more to see what needs to be protected. I mean, I was all in on that initial step, just identifying, and what happened to that? Where is it?
Well,
It
I
was
mean,
the-
the GIS guy just started, right?
Yeah, right. So I
We
think
haven't-
that's the natural first step on Area 5, and I'm all in. I mean, you look at Southern Pines, what their strategy is, buying it, turn it into parks. I mean, that's a viable option too. I mean, that's an action that could be taken. I mean, that's what the action they're taking on stuff like that. And I'm just trying to say that I supported, I thought Jane supported that thought too at that time when we brought it up. It was a first step. Understanding what is out there and what areas are undisturbed forests that need to be protected. You know, I thought I'm all in on
Focus
that.
area 5 is not is not the Southwest ETJ. It's
Oh, I'm sorry.
along 211.
Oh, you're talking about the 211. I got my focus areas off. I apologize.
Well, I
Sorry
don't know
about
how that
that.
happened.
There's a lot of that going on.
And
Let
I
me get
can't
back
imagine how
on-
you fell
off
into
that
that
soapbox.
track. Kevin.
Yeah.
I have heard,
apologize.
Never
three
happens to the rest of us.
we would like to keep that within the PDO IAP if it's,
Relevant.
We want to keep it on the front burner, Lauren.
okay, so I'm not going to add an initiative action plan to include for that specific thing. That would roll up into the PDO initiative action plan if relevant.
I don't think that's, no, I don't think that that's front burner enough. I think that the PDO is a
I think-
long straggler.
I think unless I misinterpret what I've heard here, though, I think that Kevin, Lydia, and Judy said that they're not in favor of carving out an IAP for that.
Not
Because it
carving out an
doesn't have the
IP.
precedent.
Yeah.
It
But
doesn't
John
have the
also
precedent.
said-
Keep it on the front burner, Lydia, right?
Well, at the work session, John said we're going to talk about focus area 5, right, John?
Well, it's one of the things that I think could be raised in this general discussion with the planning board. And maybe the planning board could take some action on moving the focus area 5 review along. You know, that would
And
be
I'm-
helpful for staff.
And I'm comfortable with that. I just don't think we need to add focus area 5 as an initiative action plan.
And I was going to ask Lauren, or would a review of focus area 5 and a look at that as far as the uses, would that fit into another category of staff review
Like, OSHA or something?
project or whatever? Yeah.
It could be a separate project. If it was not something that needs to roll up into this full comprehensive PDO update, I would say it could probably fall onto a project list if that's appropriate. Natalie, you may have something.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, it sounds to me like, taking a look at focus area 5 is really a project. And I think, Jane, what we would do is go back and say, okay, we got to prioritize small area plans, PDO rewrites, that, and everything else that's going on. So we would come back and, try to figure out how to make it fit. And,
Yeah.
it might mean we need more staff resources.
I haven't had the
That is a high
opportunity
priority, like
to
we've talked
talk
about
with-
already.
with
Well,
Natalie and
Jeff-
Darren about this
Yeah.
since we last talked about this, but I suggested last time we were talking about this focus area that perhaps the most efficient way to make some significant headway would be to focus on an overlay district.
Mhm.
I think that would be a project if that was a chosen path. I don't know to what, whether or not Darren agrees with me that that's an appropriate way to deal with this, but
Yeah.
But you know, Jeff, to Jane's point, I mean, I sense the urgency because of all of the property, the residential properties on the back side of that, that if anything, if that thing is developed improperly, the people who front that are gonna see ugly lights, noise, and so I'm not sure if the overlay is the way to go. I appreciate Jane's sense of urgency. I don't think it belongs as an.
think of an overlay district as additional requirements that you're layering on top of existing zoning.
Mhm.
It can
Except
be
that-
almost any type of requirement.
Well, if that addresses the, I don't know, sense of urgency, the importance in the minds of so many people who live out here, and this is not about Pine Wild, this is about protecting 211 in a way that 211 looks nice, but also the people who live on the, who border that have something they don't mind looking at. And Jane's described it really well. She's done a lot of work on that. I'm just not, I sympathize with her with how do we advance the ball on this one.
That sounds like a project which might
It
take
is.
into consideration what Jeff has mentioned, an overlay solution might be one of the options there. And maybe it works its way into this discussion perhaps later.
And there may be a better, more comprehensive way to deal with that challenger problem.
Mhm.
But what I'm suggesting is maybe the quickest, most efficient way to get most of it done is through some sort of an overlay.
Yeah.
How long do you think that would take?
I don't know.
Well,
Darren?
that's important. It's important.
You have to
consideration.
draft it. See,
Yeah.
you have to draft the provisions, and that's where you start to run into, I mean, it has to be created. So that's where it takes some research and some actual drafting. Then it has to be drafted into the ordinance. So is it doable? Yes. How quick can we do it? In light of everything else around here? Yeah,
I think this coming fiscal year is very reasonable, isn't it? As long as it fits into your other requirements. I mean, I'm just saying the feasible to get it done in a year.
We can talk about it
Yeah.
some later,
Yeah.
but
Can,
there's some other things that have come up
Mhm.
that will be in the work session that I feel can be done
mhm.
more quickly. It's some low-hanging fruit that I do feel can be managed more quickly than that. And I think we need to do it.
Can I
Natalie?
make a suggestion? I think we're hearing you loud and clear, that this is important and it needs to be on our OFI list as a project. And we will get it plugged in that list. And then, but I'm not seeing, like Lauren, any changes to the IAP, but Jane,
Not hearing any others, right?
we hear you, and we'll have a separate OFI on that list that just looks at that one particular area. We'll figure out how to do that.
And
I see so much more pressures on the medical district and focus area one that's why my
Yeah.
brain flipped over to focus
Yeah.
area one. But I see more pressures on those two, especially when you see the new cancer center. It connects all the way over to Avamore. It's going to change
Mhm.
the face of that area. I'm really scared that we're getting distracted. We have to focus on the medical district and focus area one. And
Mhm.
so I'm not as, no, I wish we would put that ahead of this project.
I think there's
Well,
quite
I
different
think-
places. I hear you on that. Let's get it on
Yeah.
the project list. We'll have a little more discussion
Okay.
perhaps later how that might get done. But
Yeah,
that was
we'll have
fun.
what
Mush it
I-
all together.
what I'd like to see is when you come back with the plan, as we get into the budget season.
Yeah.
This project should just be melded into whatever the things are that we can do relatively easily with regard to the PDO. I don't like the one-off nature of this.
I don't either.
I think it needs to be melded into the big game plan. And one of the critical issues we have is resources. Have you hired that transportation planner yet? No. So, I mean, Jane, right there, that's somebody that never came on to our budget. We're 3/4 of the way almost through this fiscal year. We don't have that resource. You've got to get out there and go get some consultants now to address all these projects because they're much more readily available apparently than full-time employees.
Right.
That's a true statement.
So council, any other changes to this initiative action plan list, or do we have it set?
No.
how it should be for now?
Fine with me.
Okay,
But Jane, did you have anything else that Lauren might not have heard? I think.
No, I had some comments on the 4 lenses, but that's not part of what we have to vote on.
Okay. Okay.
okay,
Go ahead,
so
Lauren.
I have some nods that we can go forward with developing some
Yes.
plans for these initiative action plans. And do I hear any changes for the balanced scorecard, or are we okay with how that is proposed this evening and there's a motion included?
Hey, Lauren, I'm okay with it. There are just a couple of points I want to bring up so we don't lose sight of them. And I mentioned it last time in supporting the business community. And maybe we make this a work session item, but let's don't lose sight of promoting downtown. And I think that's got 2 components. What are we trying to promote? And then how do we promote it? And we've talked about getting the marketing people together from CVB and Leanne to talk about how we promote whatever it is we want to promote. And then second, another idea I want to throw out that again, under KPI 6.3, the number of residents satisfied with village-sponsored cultural arts events. The idea has been presented to me that in West Pinehurst Park someday, we might want to consider an outdoor arena. I think of like a Wolf Trap in Northern Virginia, but I just want to throw that idea out there, and I'll probably continue to do that so we don't lose sight of it. But that might be a great place to put an outdoor arena. Some year in West Pinehurst Park.
Interesting.
What do you mean by outdoor arena?
Are you
Theater,
back?
Gladiators.
performance stage.
Performing arts
Yeah.
space, okay.
So people can go out there for concerts rather than come into the village.
Ugh.
Wow.
So we have the current plan.
How awful would that be? Really?
What was that?
Concerts?
Oh, yes.
Lauren, the floor is for Lauren, please, council members. Lauren, please go ahead.
We have currently in the plan, if you recall that discussion we had at the retreat, the plan for the West Pinehurst Park master planning.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
and then we held off kind of on some of that funding.
This
But,
is years down the road.
okay, I just want to make sure that we can, okay,
After I'm dead.
incorporate that one tomorrow. Okay,
Saying that parking lot was full the other day.
Are you ready for a motion, John?
Yes, I believe we are. If Lauren has covered all she wanted to bring to our attention.
I think so. If you're okay with this proposed balanced scorecard, we'll move forward tomorrow with our meeting with staff, and we will begin building our budget request and running it through our process here internally in order to present a good snapshot for you. We'll give you the preview here in a couple of months, and we'll have plenty of time to talk through the details of what all we're proposing for that strategic operating plan.
Right, there is a motion required for this agenda item number 5.
I move to approve the fiscal year 2022 balanced scorecard and areas of focus as presented.
Second.
Motion by Judy Davis, second by Lydia Bosch. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. We'll move on into other business. Is there any other business in advance of the work session that any council member or staff member needs to bring?
Well, I did want to mention that my neighbor, Chris Grimm, is now involved with the Boys and Girls Club. So I don't know if you guys know this, it was housed in the Aberdeen school. And then the school district didn't rehouse it in the new school. So really, they're in the village of Pinehurst and at the Elmore Furniture Store down by
Right.
Lake Boulevard. And they're servicing Aberdeen and Pinehurst. From there, we've never had one. Oh, Aberdeen has and Southern Pines has. I brought it up at the Tri-Cities. I feel like, Boys and Girls Club is incredible nonprofit, and you're gonna, they keep kids and from doing anything bad and raise good kids. So I don't know. I told them, I think one of the reasons he met with me is talking about public money. I said that's not gonna happen as a rule. And I tried to get creative with them, and then I just tried to say, gosh, you are kind of the best interest of the village of Pinehurst and Aberdeen and Southern Pines. And maybe there is a weekend we could designate to just ask our businesses to support the Boys and Girls Club. So I wanted you to know that I had that discussion. I hope it wasn't out of line. I don't think I have it with nonprofits all the time like that, but one that crosses borders, I kind of thought it was like almost a Tri-Cities support mechanism that helps us all three cities. And we don't find that much. And so I'm just, might be getting off the reservation a bit, but I just thought that, I wanted to bring it up.
That's interesting. To add to that story a little bit, just recently, just a few months ago, I was asked to be on a informal advisory board to the Boys and Girls Club. Now, this
I
was
think it'd be
before,
great.
this was before I think they made the move, or just about the time they were doing that. The other mayors are involved in it too, and we don't have any particular meeting schedule other than to about 3 times a year. So with Fallon Brewington, who's the executive director, I was going to discuss with her once they start getting moved over here, which must be fairly soon, I'm not sure, what outreach we might make to them. But we'll keep in touch on that. Yeah.
But I think it should be a trilogy of outreach when you consider that it's not a Pinehurst service facility. It's going to service
Not at all.
Aberdeen. It's
Not
going to
at all.
service Aberdeen. I think, and the pot is the same. I asked them financially, where's the money go? It goes to one place. And it's, one Boys and Girls Club, the Southern Pines and this one. So it's kind of an opportunity. I know it's kind of, it's not as, pressing as, working on our border zoning and stuff, but I don't know, it seemed like we shouldn't go it alone. We should be partnered with Aberdeen and Southern Pines on this, but that's just my opinion. And I just thought it was an opportunity to bind us together as a Tri-City. So I just got a preliminary discussion. I think I did properly say that it's unlikely there's any direct funding coming from the council. So trust me, I'm trying not to lead them down any garden path, but I am willing to roll up my sleeves for this organization.
Very good. Are there other business from any council member or staff to raise?
John, I've got one bit of news that just came in. This is for your benefit and the public as well. I don't recall the gentleman's name, but I just got a note from Glenn, our police chief, saying that that gentleman that escaped or left the hospital about a week ago and was potentially seen in some of our neighborhood there to the south of the hospital is in custody.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know much about that situation other than what you mentioned, but I think that's probably best for the person too. So that'll come to a conclusion. Moving on to item number 7, then, comments from attendees. Beth, do we have any comments tonight?
There are no comments.
Was that no?
Yes, there's no comments, and no
Thank
one,
you,
other
Beth.
than our faithful pilot staffer is here.
Mary Kate,
Mary
greetings.
Kate's here.
I believe that concludes the agenda for the regular meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the regular meeting.
Thank you, Lydia.
I'll second it.
Second, motion by Lydia Bosch and a second by Jane Hogeman to adjourn the regular meeting of the Pinehurst Village Council for January 26th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. The motion carries. We will take a 10-minute or so break to say 6:15.